This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. My name is Todd Kirk. I'm your host. I'm joined by my ever-present and hopefully dry compadre, Casey Trujillo. Casey, we're getting a little rain here in Utah this week, but glad to have you here.
Okay, because pre-show we were talking about Celsius, and we were talking a little bit about them making mistakes with their drinks and things like that. So I wasn't sure how you meant dry.
Yes, Casey is dry too. I think he is sober for this conversation, so that should be good. But we have a great guest on for the show today. We've got Bill Wilson, who is a B2B pricing strategist out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. So welcome, Bill, to your friends in the States from the Great White North, I guess. We're glad to have you here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. This is going to be a blast.
Well, maybe before we jump in too deep, it'd be helpful, Bill, to give us a little bit of background, who you are, kind of what you do, so our audience can get to know you a little bit.
For sure. I've been in software probably for, almost 30 years, I would say, which, puts an age on things. But I started off as a software engineer. And so I came into pricing very, very grassroots. So I never, ever expected to sort of end up as going from a software engineer to someone who specializes in pricing. And so through my journey, I was an enterprise software person for a long time, built products that were off the shelf that you could buy, consumer products and enterprise products. But very quickly, I got very tired of the enterprise software game and decided to run my first company, which was a product design company for mobile. So mobile was coming on strong. Lots of iPhone apps were coming out and things like that. So I had a background in mobile when it wasn't cool. And so we dug into that and started building mobile apps for people, which is where I kind of got the first taste of pricing, because we had to figure out how to price our services. And if anybody who's ever run an agency or a services company knows that selling by the hour kind of sucks. And so you've got to figure out another way to price things and package them up. So a bunch of friends of mine were running B2B SaaS companies at the time. And so I kind of stole a page from the B2B SaaS playbook around how to package things up. And fast forward a whole bunch of years, I built a startup around that idea, and we sold to B2B SaaS companies a pricing tool, and then that was acquired. And now I help B2B SaaS founders with everything related to pricing, which for me involves everything from product to positioning to packaging to price points, the whole works.
Oh my gosh, super cool, Bill. I think people are like, this is a genie in a lamp that they want to just rub that, have you come out and poof, say, yeah, you charge, $24.99 per month. So, Bill, I've been in many SaaS organizations, and every time we start talking pricing, there's the CRO or someone in the room that comes out and they open up an Excel spreadsheet and they say, okay, I've done the math. And then they have some formula that they built inside of Excel, and then they multiply that out and they tell us we're going to, close 600 million that year because of their new pricing model. Right, wrong, indifferent. How do you approach that? What's kind of your formula, your philosophy around that?
It's interesting because the one thing I know about pricing is that it's a bit of a hot potato in organizations, right? And it naturally has to be, because everybody experiences a price change differently inside the organization. And so if we think about the 6 core functions of a SaaS company, we've got product, customer success, engineering, marketing, sales, finance, sort of that's kind of everybody. Every single one of those gets impacted by a pricing change. Like sales is going to start to think, well, how am I going to be able to, I can't close more deals if we've changed the pricing. Or the CFO is like, hey, how are we going to do projections if we don't, if this doesn't go right? Marketing's like, we just redid all the messaging. Do we have to do it again? Like there's just so many people are experiencing price change inside the organization different than each other. And that is why, and I'm not sure if this is really going to answer your question or not, but that is why there's so much tension around all those different places, and someone is going to own it. And that sometimes ends up being the CFO, or head of sales or head of product, depending on the type of organization you run. And a lot of organizations, the ultimate decision will come down to the CEO. And so that's how much of a hot potato it is. So for me, what I've realized over time is that product, pricing, and positioning go hand in hand. And if we can accept that as an organization, that if you move one of those levers, all the other ones have to move with it, then that actually starts to give us a bit of a common lens that we can start to look at things through. And so since all the other internal teams are going to be pulling in all of these different directions, you know, like that's like this internal kind of chaos that's happening, all to get to a place where we need to present an offer to a customer with a price on it. Right. And the customer's just going, look, I've just got to get this thing done. And we're all in here going, oh, what are we going to do? And so we need some kind of common lens. So I use jobs to be done as the common lens that everybody can sort of rally around to try and understand how our customers are going to buy things and how we can actually talk about it internally. And if we can get a common frame of reference inside the organization, then everybody can actually start to have their say, have the feelings they're going to have, but also rally around a central piece, which is always the voice of the customer. And so I don't think that it fully answers your question, but like when I think about like who's responsible and how it shows up, that's what comes up for me. And I see it over and over and over again. And so getting a common language across the organization, acknowledging that it's going to be painful, and then allowing that uncomfortableness to set in is actually the secret to making good pricing decisions.
And Bill, I've seen your posts, and if you haven't followed Bill on LinkedIn, follow him on LinkedIn. But I noticed that you had like this 4-step approach of discover and profile, design the model, set the price, test and validate. Like when I read that, I was like, wait a second, I've never seen that. I've only seen a spreadsheet. So I'm assuming that maybe the person on the other end that created the spreadsheet did those 4 things, but I don't know if you could maybe just kind of give a synopsis of each one of those. And I'm sure Todd will have a follow-up question and maybe dive in a little bit more around them.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, I will say this, that they haven't done those steps, right? Like if it depends on who's doing the work, right? Sales be like, this is what we think we can sell. CFO is like, this is what I think is going to be the most stable for projections. Like they all just have different wants and needs. So the way I try and approach it in those 4 steps is exactly like, how do we generate revenue today? Let's get a baseline. Let's really understand it as a team. And sometimes when you get everybody together in the organization and have that conversation, it'll be the very first time you're all talking about it at that lens. So, what goes with that is talking to your customer. And so that's the basis of all of this. It's like, how do we generate revenue today? Let's get table stakes. What's our churn look like? What are all these things that are happening inside the data side? And then what's actually happening from a customer perspective. And so once we can figure those 2 things out, then we can now start to architect packaging and pricing around what our customers want that also services the goals of the company. And so in that sort of first phase, what you really should be looking at is like, what are our big goals here? Like there's only 3 real big levers we can pull in SaaS. We've got retention, expansion, and acquisition. And I know that's simplification, but ultimately that's what it comes down to, right? We need to acquire customers, we need to retain those customers, and we need to get them to spend more money because churn is real. And if we don't get them to spend more money, we're going to have less than 100% gross revenue retention, and we're going to be in trouble. And so we want to get net revenue retention much higher. So those are the 3 levers we have. And so that's what we should be sort of focused on around that point, like defining the goals and listening to what our customers have to say. And so the packaging piece really then just comes around to like, what are the jobs to be done our customers are trying to do? And let's package around those. Figure out what the point of first demand is and let's package around it. And it sounds really simple. And oftentimes people just don't think of it this way. But honestly, your customers kind of have all the answers. And we just have to know how to ask the right questions. And so if we can get to an architecture that the team believes in, like, hey, this is going to scale with the business, this is aligned with our customers' value, how they grow. If they grow, we grow. That's the ultimate. Like real world example, Stripe, right? Is perfect. $1 is $1 is $1, and they take the 2.9% of it, no matter what. It's the highly, highly scalable. Now, do people feel like it's a tax sometimes? 100%. That's a different problem. But generally, that's a very, very dense value metric. Like it's totally tied to the value that's generated. And so we want to get some level of getting close to that. And that's what we're doing sort of like that at that stage. So far, we haven't even touched price points, right? Like we haven't like we're talking about pricing and we've not even touched a price point. All we've done is look at how we generate revenue, what the customer wants, package it around things we think they'll buy. And now we can start to think about a price. Because the most important thing about pricing, in my opinion, is that it's not how much you charge, it's how you charge. because if we can get how we charge for something really, really aligned with our customer, that's going to feel natural. And that solves 80% of the problem. After that, then it's really about willingness to pay and understanding where do we fit in the market, triangulate around the price point, around value. There's lots of different ways to set price points. And it's honestly the least fun part of pricing, in my opinion, because we can solve it with quantitative data. We can, there's so many different ways to set a price. And they're very well known. And what really matters, though, is that we're pricing the right thing. And so we have this unique thing in SaaS where the product is so malleable, it changes. The offer can, the marketing site can change, which really just changes the product. Even the way you talk about it, it could be the same product underneath, but the way you position it and talk about it is different. And that can impact how you sell things. Versus if I am trying to sell a can of Celsius, it's a can of Celsius. There's not much I can change about it, right? I can change the branding, but inside it's the same stuff. So that's when we start setting price points and then really comparing ourselves to the competition. And that's where that comes in. But it never, ever is over until we can fully feel like it's a validated model. And the way to get validation is 4 steps. First step is, does it feel good to us as a team? So all those people that had all of those different emotions at the beginning around why it's hard, they all have to buy into this thing. And if they don't, we're not done, right? We have to go back. Now, we're not looking for consensus. We're looking for consent, right? But they have to believe that I consent, this is going to work. They may not, they may be, but they still need to consent that it's going to happen. After that, though, we need to actually go and talk to our existing customers again and test it with them. And so what I like to do is take them through a buying journey all over again, right? So get them on a phone. Hey, pretend Acme Co. has changed their packaging and we want to present it to you and see where you might fit. And so we have a real conversation with them about the way we charge, not how much, but the way. So you're not even showing them prices at this point. You're just trying to understand how they think about the buying decision. That's how we can test whether the offer and the value metric are correct. And after that, if we can get that validation done and we do a little bit of, validation of the price with them, then the ultimate test is go sell it in market. And so I like to take a rep, a real good coachable rep, give them the new pricing, protect their upside, and let them rip for 30 days and see what they can get done. And so that was a very long-winded version of what those 4 steps are, but hopefully that was helpful. And that's how I think about it.
Well, I like that a lot, Bill. And I think one of the things that comes to my mind, at least as you were sharing that, is I would dare say that in most cases, everybody knows that they are not doing a great job with the way that they price. Meaning, like, pretty much no matter where you are, every seller is going to feel like it's too expensive and the market's rejecting it, or the product team feels it's too low because that we're giving away too much value, or our cost is upside down. The CFO has a different idea of pricing, but a lot of it has to do with how everything gets presented in the financials. And so, like, everybody knows that pricing needs to be adjusted or corrected a lot of the times. Like, I would say other than the ones who are really killing it, most organizations know their pricing could use a lot of work. The problem is everybody's afraid to kind of monkey around with pricing. So the thing that I'm curious about is, how do you know when it's time to do it? Because it's not just consent, because I think you can get consent, but I think a lot of people are afraid of like when and how you should go through those steps to actually make it happen. And they're terrified of making the wrong decision and, making all these changes and then not having it work. So I guess it's a 2-parter, which is like, first, how do you know when you should actually go down this road and start really getting serious about your pricing strategy? And then secondarily, how do you avoid running into some pitfall that's going to actually end up being a disaster once you start?
Yeah. Great question, because what we started with was sort of like, how do you do it, but like, why do you do it, I guess is really what we're saying. So yeah, and I think there's some good signal, and oftentimes they're really kind of felt in your gut. Like, you kind of just know that we might be leaving money on the table, like some of those kinds of things. Like, why is it that we're getting all these new customers, but our revenue is just only going up a little bit, or like there's something else going on. One of the big ones I see is that people haven't changed their pricing in a couple of years. Like, usually that's a pretty good signal that it's time to have a look at your pricing, because I guarantee you your product's changed, and I guarantee you the market's changed a little bit. And so it's probably a good time to recalibrate and understand what's going on. Some of the other ones are some of the smells that you can sort of get from, pricing is not working quite right, is heavy discounting inside the sales org to get deals across the line. Sometimes that's just, bad, policy. But oftentimes it's like the value doesn't meet the price, and there's some disconnect between those two things. Late stage churn. So people who were a customer for a year or 2 years now are starting to churn, like that kind of thing. There's some kind of disconnect now between what they were getting and what they thought it was worth and what they're paying. So there's a reason they're leaving. And so like sometimes that will show up. I would say, and the growth ceiling is probably the other big one I see a lot, is basically when churn catches up with acquisition, you're pretty flat, right? And that happens a lot. And so that's usually a sign to me that, our net revenue retention isn't great, and we don't have any expansion mechanism, any of those kinds of things. So like that's another tell. The other big one is that if you haven't changed pricing, if you do, or if you're one of the lucky ones that actually does change the pricing fairly frequently, that you don't change it for your existing customers. So if you find yourself in a situation where you haven't changed pricing for your existing, you've changed pricing 2 or 3 times over the last 4 or 5 years, but you haven't brought along your existing customers, it's just getting worse. It's just getting worse. So fix that now. So those are the big ones that I see. Like the when founders come to me, CEOs, product people, they come to me, they go, we think we're leaving money on the table, or this is like any one of those problems are happening. And that's usually a signal that it's time to have a look at it.
Okay, Bill. So I want to go back to one that you commented of, like, as much as I have been doing this SaaS Therapy podcast, people always say, talk to your customer, talk to your customer, talk to your customer, right? And I never see anyone talk to their customers. Like, it's the funniest thing in the world, right? It's the biggest platitude out there, talk to your customers. But if I survey people's customers, it's like, yeah, I get a survey every now and then to do the NPS or something like that, but no one ever talks to me. And I think it's because the executive team is usually scared to talk to the customer, because then they feel obligated to go do something, right? Like, if I actually have a conversation with you, the expectation from you as the customer is that you're going to expect me to act on what you give me feedback on, and I might not want to act on that. So they don't want to be in that awkward situation. So when you're doing these consultations and saying, hey, I want to help you set pricing, here's one of the things I'm going to do. I'm going to meet with your customers. We're going to talk about jobs to be done. I'm going to understand a little bit more on how that pricing might work. And then I'm going to try to validate some pricing with them. How do you navigate that to get someone to sign off on that? Like, give me your tips, sir. Like, how do you first, I want to say, how do you get the customer to open up to share that? Because again, if someone's asking me as a customer, I'm going to like lowball it, or I'm going to say free, right? And then the executive team managing that with the executive team and saying, no, here's what we need to do. So one, how do you get the customer to give you honest feedback around that? And then two, how do you get the executive team to understand that, hey, we need to do this. You don't have to act on it, but we need to do this to get this information. And this is going to give us our best chance of having success. So those two questions, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's because we don't frame them as pricing conversations, generally, is what I would say, right? These are more about product value. We want to understand how customers get value from our product. And unbeknownst to them, what they're doing is sharing with us is how we should price and monetize. And so like, that's really what we're trying to do. And I've never been in a situation where I haven't done these interviews, even coupled with a survey that does the same thing, plus the interviews, that the product teams haven't been just absolutely over the moon with the work that we've done from a product perspective. And so if that's the case, then really, like, the executive team doesn't have anything to worry about in terms of like, is it a pricing interview? Because it's not. Are we going to ask them about what made them buy? Are we going to ask them if they're involved in the buying decision? If we're going to ask them what they hope to achieve when they bought it? Absolutely. But are we going to ask them, how much do you think we should charge for it? No, that's not today's problem. That's once we've gone through this whole process and we're all convinced that we have something that we should test, then we go ask them those questions. And what I usually tell my customers is that your customers want you to win.
That's cool. I like that mindset.
They do want you to win. They want you to have good pricing. Why? Because they made the decision to buy your stuff. And so if they made the decision to buy your stuff, they don't want to be wrong. Like there's a little ego wrapped in that too, right? It's like, I don't want to feel like I bought the wrong thing because you screwed up your pricing. I want you to have good pricing. I want it to feel fair. I want it to feel like I'm getting the value I paid for. Like we all know what that feels like, right? Like you walk in and you pick something up and you're like, wow, this is really nice. And you know what? Like that's totally worth it. Like you can, like any kind of physical good, right, that you've picked up and you're like, oh yeah, I would totally pay that. And you feel happy about it. You almost feel happy about it. It's not because you're like, now my wife will say, it's like, every time somebody says, hey, nice, I love your shirt, she's like, oh, I got it at so-and-so and it was $7.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so the measurement's
Ask me how much I got this for. Ask me how much I paid. Right. I love it when they say that. Yeah.
So there's a difference between, like, sometimes things can feel too cheap and we don't want that. And sometimes things can feel absolutely out of touch and we don't want that either. What we want is somewhere in between this feels like a good deal and this is getting expensive. And for those people who are listening that, sort of put that together, it's kind of like the Van Westendorp pricing sensitivity meter that you can ask customers. But that's kind of where we want people, is in that range of it feels good, it's like a good bargain, or it's feeling like it's like, ooh, I hope this is going to work. And so we want those two things, because it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, whether you're selling SaaS or anything else, a good deal is when both sides feel a little bit uncomfortable. Right? Can you do what you say you can do? And so that's what they're saying. And we're going, can we do what we said we can do? Right? For the money they're paying us. And those two things that friction has to be there, because if one person's winning, like there's a lopsided value equation there, and it doesn't feel right. And we've all experienced that too, airlines, like we've all experienced those kinds of things as well. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I talk to executives about it. And now I'm not going to say they don't get a little bent out of shape about talking to their customers, but usually it's a little bit of a combination of trust the process and here's the types of questions we're really asking. And we also allow our customers to participate in the like, we provide them with the scripts and how it's all going to go, and we have a whole recruiting process. And we want to talk to certain types of customers. We love talking to churned customers, for example, that kind of thing, because they're a wealth of information, right? It's like you thought it was valuable and then you didn't. What happened? So yeah, that's how we get through that. And I know you had two parts to that question, but that's
well, dang, no, you answered it all. Todd has a bunch of questions, but I just want to double down on that last question of going to your churn customers and that question of, hey, you saw value, then you churned. Why? What? Where was the miss? It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if they'll actually give it to you. That's gold. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So Bill, I want to do some rapid fire questions at you that when I think about pricing in SaaS, everybody has kind of some standard models that they take, and I'm curious what your reaction is. So first, simple pricing or complex pricing?
Depends on the audience. So if I'm an engineer or running an engineering team and I'm buying Amazon Web Services, it's necessarily complex, because I know exactly what I need and I want to, I need to consume these things. If I'm buying Netflix, it needs to be pretty straightforward. So it really depends on the audience. And so I'd like to say that if pricing doesn't have to be simple, it just has to be understood.
Okay.
And so it needs to be understood by your buyer. Mm-hmm.
Love that. So, usage-based pricing versus just fixed monthly pricing.
I would go with, if I had to pick between just those two, I would say usage, 100%. We need expansion. And so that basically means the more you use, the more you pay. And we need that in order to actually survive. Because like I mentioned before, churn is real and we're going to lose customers because that's just the way it works. The ultimate, though, to me would be a hybrid model of those things. So a good, better, best, combined with some level of usage or outcome-based. I mean, let's be honest, activity, usage-based pricing. And hopefully a couple of vectors of usage-based pricing would get you the ultimate sort of protected model.
Okay. What about volume-based discounts? A lot of times, especially when you're in B2B SaaS, you're selling really large enterprise deals, especially if you have like a per seat license. the pricing can get really complicated to your sellers to the point where they don't know how to actually quote it to the customer. So even though you're trying to maximize the number of all the value you can extract from the customer, but you're trying to give them a sense of the deal. So how do you do that in a way to where it doesn't become super difficult? Or is there value in keeping it like easy enough for a seller to be able to quote somebody from their brain rather than having to go to a pricing calculator every time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of discounting, and I know that's going to get a lot of pushback. And what I mean by discounting, there was strategic discounts. I'm not a huge fan of like closing discounts for the sake of closing, although they are reality, and there's ways of handling those. But strategic discounts are, to me, is like we've understand the type of customer we want to incentivize. So we understand the size of customer that makes sense for us to have a set of discount practices that make sense. And so it's a strategic discount, and it's usually on a curve of some kind. So basically, it's like if you're just coming in and you've got 500 widgets and that's what you're going to buy, and like that's our typical customer, I'm probably not going to incentivize that sale, right? But if you're coming in and buying 50,000, I may be incentivizing that sale because I want more people just like you. And so I accelerate my discount as I get closer and closer to that. But the most important thing is it's predefined. It's not something that's done on a deal by deal basis. You define what that structure is and why it's there strategically. And you have bands of discount, and you can do a couple different ones. You can do sort of like progressive discounting, like taxes, right? Like everybody pays the same price for the first 500, and after that, everybody pays the next 1,000. Or you can do bulk discounting. It's like, oh, you're bringing us all this volume right away. Cool, here, everything. If you do that, this is the price we can give you. The thing is that it's just predetermined. It really should be as much as a rep looking up in a table, like this is where you would fit, and then you can even average it out, and that means that you're paying this much per XYZ, because the total cost of ownership is going to go down over time, which is what we want. So we want them to feel like the total cost of ownership of our solution is actually less the more they add on a per thing they're adding, right? And that's the most important piece, is like total cost of ownership, especially in enterprise deals. So yeah, that's how I look at those. Yeah.
Awesome, Bill.
Okay. Wait, I
You
got
got
one
more?
more,
You got
Casey. I
more?
got one. I got one more.
Okay,
One more
you got
rapid
one more,
fire.
man.
Okay. Free offerings versus trial offerings versus upgrade paths from trial or free to premium. What's your thoughts on premium
free.
models and the right way to convert a free account into a paid account?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I often, so like for me, free isn't really a pricing thing, even though, positioning, product pricing, and all goes together. But free is an acquisition channel. And so it is the way you acquire a customer. And so what we need to be doing is giving them a vertical slice through all the value you deliver. That's the number one way to get people to move up, is that you give them everything, just a limited amount of it. And so versus some people will actually do a free plan, which will like really severely limit the capability of the product, to the point where you're not getting full value or you can't see full value. And so I think that's the number one way to get people to upgrade, is give them everything, but give them a vertical slice that they need, and they can do a few of. Like Calendly is beautiful at this, right? I get almost everything in Calendly. I can make one event. I can do all this stuff. I don't need to have round robin, maybe, and all that kind of stuff. But I have one event and I can do it. But as soon as I want to make another event, I'm like, they're like, cool, would you like to pay us now? I'm like, yes, I would. 100%, all day long. And so I think that's the thing. Like Notion does this even on their personal plan still. They have a thing called a limit of 1,000 blocks that you can do. So you can do everything in Notion on that plan. But once you get to 1,000 items, whatever that is, you then have to start paying. Right. And that's on their sort of like their personal plans. You don't see it too much if you're just showing up as a business, because it's just, you just buy the team plan. There is no free, blocks or whatever. It's just, get started. So that's to me, I think that, free is a really, really excellent, or said another way, PLG is a really excellent motion. The trap, though, is a company that is sales led, for example, deciding that the solution to all their problems is going product led, or a company that's been product led deciding that sales led is the solution to all their problems. It happens all the time. People want to go up market and down market, and they think these are the ways. And they are different product problems. The product has to evolve. Like if you're sales led, it's a lot harder to go product led, because you haven't built your product necessarily to do all that activation, capture those aha moments, get them time to value as fast as possible, all the things that are going to drive them to like self upgrade. just aren't there. So
Such
it's
a
not really
therapy
rapid fire,
session.
but there you go.
Bill, it's so great. And what I love about guests that we have on is they are experts, and you're just dropping nuggets all over the place on us. Thank you so much. Bill, you have a ton of experience, and to me, experience is always the best indicator of what you're saying to us. But is there any data or any studies around what you said around with that freemium model of saying, hey, give them everything and then just a limited amount versus a little bit of the value? Is there any data points that you have that you refer to, or is just your experience of what you've seen? And either answer is okay. I was just
I'm
curious.
okay with subjective truth, Bill, even if Casey's not.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely just my experience of seeing it and being a customer and also helping founders get through it. But also, if you want to find stuff like that, I would say the best resource for that would have been and is Kyle Poyer, in terms of because he went deep into usage-based pricing like 6 years ago, and he's been sort of on that train ever since in PLG. He talks about a lot of other stuff now, but man, he's got some really strong data back stuff. So if anybody's really interested in that, Kyle Poyer is the GOAT when it comes to that stuff in monetization and PLG.
Yeah, he has like 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Todd, don't pretend like you know this person.
Well, we're second connections. Maybe one day I'll get first
hurry and went and
connections
look
with
that
him.
up. You just hurry and like.
Yeah.
Bill,
Don't you dare make me look like I'm not super cool.
Todd is so cool. Bill, that was actually gonna be my next question is who are what are the books that you're reading, and who are the people you're following that kind of help you put this framework together? Because obviously you are buttoned up. Highly recommend utilizing Bill if you're looking to price something out, reach out to him. But what are some of the mentors? What have been some of the influences have you gone through this that you might direct our users to?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that Price Intelligently produced, from 2019 on, those guys were kind of, Patrick Campbell's an incredibly intelligent guy that put together an amazing company that he sold for many hundreds of millions of dollars to Paddle. So good for him. But yeah, so like ProfitWell, Price Intelligently, those guys, they put out some great stuff. Another person that I think is he wrote a really great book. It's called The Pricing Roadmap. His name is Ulrich Leshkov Schmidt, I think. He's out of Denmark, and he wrote a fantastic book. I've been following him since probably 2020 or so, and I learned a lot from him. He shaped a lot of the way I think. April Dunford, about not necessarily about pricing, but about positioning and sales. And if you haven't listened to or read anything by April Dunford, I highly recommend you do. It will be incredibly entertaining and highly valuable. Her book, Obviously Awesome, is probably one of my go-to books. And her second book, called Sales Pitch, is fantastic. And if you get a chance, listen to her. Find her on YouTube and listen to her speak. She's just fascinating. And I'm not saying that just because she's Canadian, but
I love it, Bill.
So I would say those folks are really, really great. Who else would I put in that realm? And Kyle Poyer, like I mentioned, like those are some of the big names that I would.
Don't tell me how many followers they have, and don't tell me your first connections. I don't need to know that.
One day I'll be cool. We'll see. But so Bill, okay. So I love that, by the way. So April Dunford is somebody who I actually do think is amazing. That's somebody I've also followed for a while. But one of the things that I really love that you pointed out at the start of this conversation that we really haven't hit on super hard yet, and I don't want to miss this, is just the fact that a lot of times pricing isn't I loved your point about it's not a question of how much, it's a question of how, I think is how you said it, right? Yeah. So meaning the fact that we tend to decouple pricing from the position, from the product. One of the things that I want to understand a little bit better is so just, I mean, Casey and I work in SaaS too, and we talk to tons of SaaS companies all the time. How should we be thinking about how to make the price better aligned to the product and the message that we're trying to hit? Because as the example of well, I could decouple a bunch of features and then charge for things because now I can upsell. And maybe the thing that everybody wants, there's this bonus thing that they don't care about as much. So I don't want to force them to buy it. Like those are some of the things where my mind goes, but I'm sure you have a smarter, better, more articulate way of helping me understand, or helping our audience understand How do you tie price to your marketing and your positioning statement so that it's clear and easier for people to understand why they should buy when they look at your price?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great question and highly nuanced, as you can imagine. But there, the once we understand what our customer's point of first demand is, like those kinds of things, the positioning that we take in market is probably the most important thing. And so one thing that April Dunford does incredibly well, and I'm probably going to ruin it here, but is the difference between positioning and messaging. So messaging is how we talk about our positioning, and positioning is how we point towards the market. And so what I like to think about, and I tell founders all the time, it's like we have to put a flag in the sand, and we say, we believe this, right? We believe that the way we've solved this problem, like think about like a standard problem that everybody's been solving forever, time tracking or something. It's like, look, everybody else has been doing time tracking and that's fine, but we believe this. We believe that you shouldn't have to log your time and it should be all done automatically, or some kind of like position. That's your position in the market. That's not messaging, that's not marketing. That's just like, this is what we believe. And because if you can get someone to believe what you believe, or you can find the people who also believe that, they're already with you. And so if you believe that, follow me, right? And so then everything on your pricing page, everything on your homepage is just backing up that position. And so that's how I like to think about those two things. And the reason why that's connected to pricing and packaging is because I've worked with companies that have amazing positioning, and then you go click on pricing and it just looks like a menu out of a buffet or a Chinese food place where it's just like you can't make heads or tails of it, and none of it matches. None of what they're actually selling me on the pricing page connects with anything they're doing. It might, but it's so low level engineering-y or something, it just doesn't connect. And so that's why the packages should reflect, like I always say, in 6 seconds, somebody should identify where they belong in your packaging. They should be able to read that. They should be able to read the headline and the subheadline and go, yep, that's for me. Or at least that's where I think I should start. And if they can't do that, then they're just confused, or they just shouldn't be there in the first place. But if they're, an ICP, they should be able to identify where they fit. And so that's how those two things all fit together. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but there's one other nuance that you sort of touched on. It's like, well, how do I know when I should break things out? And, maybe that's an add-on and maybe this is the thing. So there's definitely, like, once you get the packaging down, then it's like, how do we get people to move around? How do we give them more of the things they need? And how do we make sure that we're not overselling, that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I run into is value dilution. And so that's where people put so much in a package that people actually start to think it's worth less, which is so counterintuitive to us, right? Because we think more is better. But in fact, the most important things, and just those important things, are what is better. So if you can actually surface the 3 to 5 things in a package that that person, that persona wants out of that package and that job to be done, you will do so much better than going, here's our laundry list of things we have. Because 9 times out of 10, they don't care about that shit. They care just about those things. So value dilution is a big one. Now, how do you fix that value dilution? Well, one, understanding the jobs to be done, but 2 is like, okay, if there are some things in these packages that are really valuable, but only for a certain amount of people, like a small amount of people, then those are perfect examples of add-ons. So my rule there, and this is sort of like a tactic, is if you look across your feature set and there's a feature that could be used by everybody, but it is not, and it's only used by a certain few people, but those few people use the crap out of it, that is something they're willing to pay for. And pull it out, make it an add-on, sell it to just those people. You'll get rid of the value dilution. Like, I just talked to somebody who does training and stuff, and they have to do enterprise formats like SCORM. And he's like, most of my customers don't give a crap, but I'm leading with SCORM on my list of features. And I'm like, yeah, get rid of it. Give it the hook. Put it in an enterprise package with some other things that they care about in the e-learning space, and sell it to them as an enterprise package. Most of your customers are mid-market. Why are we diluting our value to them? Because they're going to go, oh, this isn't really for me. I don't even know what SCORM is. Right. And so that's a real world example that just happened on a coaching call just now. But yeah, is that what you're getting at? Is that helpful? Yeah.
So good, Bill. I mean, Todd, what I think we're going to have, and Bill's not going to resonate with this at all because he's from Canada, but we should have an unofficial sponsor of every podcast. So not like an official sponsor, like they pay us or anything, but an unofficial sponsor. And our unofficial sponsor of this podcast is In-N-Out. They nail the marketing. It's all about burgers. I pay a fair price. I always feel like I'm robbing In and Out at the end of the day. So that's our unofficial sponsor of today's
All
episode
right.
of this
I like a
podcast.
good
Because
In-N-Out burger.
Bill, you're hitting it. You're hitting it really well.
Yeah.
Bill, how do I handle that every year? Because in SaaS, I think this is common for everybody. They want to do a 10% increase because it is what it is. And that's the way they try to drive upsells, is not really an upsell, but they charge more because it's your time to renew. Any feedback on that approach that you just see so many SaaS companies doing today? That's like, yeah, you're just always going to get a standard 5% bump because we need to make our numbers look good. But then, of course, they couch it with added value they're now giving for this year to the customer, and the customer hates it and they negotiate. So, any feedback around that?
Well, it depends on the type of deal, but in enterprise deals, I always love to give procurement people a hill to die on, and and that's usually the one they pick. I apologize to any procurement people who are listening who that's not the case. I'm not using a very wide brush here, but in my experience, there's hills they like to die on because their job is to save the company money and make sure those escalators are as small as possible. But the reality is those escalators have to be there. Your costs, your things that your ecosystem is changing all the time, and if you're charging the same as you're charging last year, you're charging less than you charged last year because shit goes up. Like, it just does. And so there's a couple things that we want to do. One, we don't want to be, egregiously raising prices for no reason. I have worked with a customer that every single feature that came out, they charged for by the user, and every year they did a 10% price increase no matter what on everything. And they were, in my opinion, they were very close to their customers just revolting. But they had a mission, and that mission was to make as much revenue as possible and get sold. And so they were just hammering that thing every year. Now, other folks will build in escalators, and my guess is in 12 months you have improved the product, you have added value, and so there are a number of things that you should be doing to communicate that value. And I think that's the most important thing. It's not so much that you're doing the price increase. It's really about, look, we got to remind people all the time of the value that we deliver them, because if we're doing our jobs right, we disappear. It's just part of their stack. They use it all the time. Like, they just can't live without it. And it's just there, and they expect it to be there. So first thing we got to do is we got to thank them. They're the reason we have a business. Second thing we need to do is remind them of the value we give them, right? And all the thing, and then why we're doing what we're doing and what's coming up, right? So constantly sort of value, future looking, sort of product statements, things like that. And then we need to just say, hey, your new price is going to be this, and don't apologize for it. That's generally how I look at those things, is because it's just the reality of business is that these things are going to go up, and this is what the new price is. People don't get me wrong. Nobody likes a price increase. No one, but they will accept it. And that's where we need to be. And so if you can show what you're doing, what you're going to be doing, what you've done, the value you've delivered to them, show them the price increase. And then finally, don't make them ask a ton of questions. They need to figure out, like, when does this take effect? What do I have to do? And then finally reframe it. And this is a tip from Patrick Campbell. And he used to always say at the bottom of the email, always put, if this is a material change to your business, I want to talk to you. Here's my number. Because what that does is it psychologically reframes this increase into what it really means. How much of an impact is this really going to have on your business compared to, is it material? Is it actually material to your business? Is it more than 2% of your revenue? Is it more than, like whatever it is? And if it is, then there's something else going on. We probably should talk. I want to help you. And so it's just a psychological reframe on those things. So I am okay with escalators every year, provided the product is being improved. If the product is not being improved, I'm okay with escalators at maybe a smaller level that maybe are aligned up with CPI or some other index that makes sense to keep it fair. But yeah, I mean, oftentimes it is kind of the reality. And the other thing to do is we do want to, I will say this, if I have an example where I use, if Toyota and Honda with their Civic and their Camry or another Camry, whatever they have, the Corolla, if they were, if one of them decided to stop increasing their prices in 2013, and then in 2025 you go and look at the car now, and it's like Honda Civic's $30,000 and a Corolla is still $18,000. Which one do you think is more valuable? right? Even though they kept up with innovation and they kept improving the product and they kept doing the things, but they just didn't increase prices, you're just going to start to think it's crap eventually. And so you need to be signaling to the market that you're valuable. And one of the ways to do that is to continually increase your price, and not egregiously, but just like staying pace with market. And that's an important thing. It's a value signal.
Bill, this has been awesome and super insightful. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Because this is the show is SaaS Therapy, right? And I would guess a lot of people on here have felt maybe triggered at times, thinking about their own problems that they have in their business and the frustrations that they feel and the state that they feel is impossible that they would like to get to. So because every good therapy session always ends with some call to action, a homework assignment, if you will, that you can go and do and live your life differently, right? If you could give one homework assignment to our audience who's listening today, what would that be?
Well, the most tactical thing I think you can do, especially if you have a public facing pricing page, is to go tackle that and figure out if it's actually positioning you properly. And I've got a tool for that. You can go to scorecard.pacepricing.com and you can go through a 22-point checklist that will help you out. That's the simplest tactical thing you can do. And then the next best thing you can do is go do a little research on jobs to be done and get on the phone with 5 to 7 customers. Ask them about value and how they get it. And that'll set you on a path of both product and pricing that will be super helpful.
Oh, fantastic. Bill, that's awesome. For anybody who is curious, Bill Wilson is on LinkedIn. And by next year, he'll have more than Kyle. So go follow him now. It'll be great. Bill, thank you again for joining us. And as we head into winter here, I hope everything stays nice and comfortable as you move into the cold of winter there in Canada.
Appreciate that. Phil. Okay. This was a blast, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.